All right, man. What's going on, man? What's going on? You know what time it is? It is the Reentry Journey podcast. Tonight, our guest tonight is no other. I mean, I'm the guest tonight. That's right. I'm the guest tonight. We've been sharing a lot of other people's stories, and some of y'all, it just dawned on me that a lot of people in the group don't know my story. So I decided tonight to share my story for the group, share my story for the listeners. And if you have any questions and you want to tune in and ask me some questions, you can either type it in the chat or whatever. But tonight, I'm the guest. So if you tuned in and you want to be the interviewer, I'll be gladly to put you on, let you come on and let you interview me. But tonight I will be the guest. So yeah, I'm gonna share my stories. If you have any questions, feel free to type it in. This is episode 6 of the Reentry Journey. I am the host, Kardell Sims, and tonight I'm going to be the guest as well. As I said before, if anybody wants to come on and be the host for tonight and ask me questions, listen to my story, I'm willing to let you come on and do that tonight. But yeah, so tonight I am the guest on the Reentry Journey podcast. What's going on to everybody out there that's tuning in? You know, glad to see you all make it back. For those that ain't make it back this Monday, I'm hoping that they in good health and they out there doing good with themselves. Because this reentry journey, man, is not easy. Making this transition is not easy. As I said, tonight I am the guest, also the host. But if I'm opened up right now, man. Anybody want to be the interviewer tonight? All you gotta do is just let me know. Tap comment, say you want to be the interviewer. I send you the link. You come on. You get to ask me the questions. But tonight I am the guest on the Reentry podcast because we've been listening to a lot of people's stories, and I got this group, and a lot of people in this group don't really know my story. A lot of people listen to the podcast don't know my story, so they like what qualifies you to have this reentry journey podcast. What do you know about the reentry journey? What do you know about prison or and things like that? Well, I'm gonna let you know what I know. My story is simply this. I came from an impoverished neighborhood. I grew up in a neighborhood, where all of us are struggling. Nobody was rich. Wasn't no what you call it silver spoons or none of that. It was just everybody was struggling and striving to maintain. I grew up in the projects, Anthony Buckner projects at that, on Buckner Court. The nickname of the court that I grew up on was called Killer Court. And I mean, grew up in a household, as I look back at it now, it was somewhat dysfunctional household as it got older, it was a lot of addiction and things like that. My father really wasn't nowhere around. I might have seen him like once every 6 years or so. My mother was young. My mother had me when she was 16. I had an older sister, a couple years older than me. So my mother's first child had her first child when she was on the verge of turning 14. So my mother was on the move while we was growing up, and we stayed with my grandmother. For those of you that's tuning in, I am the guest tonight on the podcast. I came to the conclusion that I've been having people on sharing their stories, and nobody really has heard my story or what qualifies me to talk about the reentry journey. So I'm sharing my story. And if you tune in, if you want to be the interviewer, just type in the chat, say you want to be the interviewer, you want to be the host for the night. I'll put you on as the host, and you can ask me questions, or you can type the questions in the chat. But yeah, I grew up in an impoverished neighborhood, and later on down the road, my mother ended up being on drugs. But I learned how to hustle at an early age, and I had adapted this mindset that I was a product of my environment. So with this mindset, it led me to foster homes, juvenile detention, and things like that. And while I was in a foster home, I learned how to play basketball real good. I was always a good basketball player. And so on the verge, really, because I wasn't going to school at this time. So what led me to a foster home, you know, was an assault case. I called it assault case, 15 years old, first degree assault. We almost killed somebody. And because I could play basketball real good, the coaches came to court. They spoke on my behalf. They talked about my situation with my mother being on drugs and my household situation with the judge. And I ended up going to a foster home with one of the coaches that was the AAU coach when I was playing basketball and running track. So I ended up staying with this coach in the foster home. He was my foster parents. And I started focusing in on playing basketball because prior to me catching my first felony at 15 years old, I probably wouldn't have made it through high school because I've been seeing a lot of my close friends dropping out, selling drugs, and I was hanging with them. So eventually that was going to happen. But I caught the case at 15 years old, first degree assault. I got put in the foster home because I could play basketball. And they used the fact that my mother's drug addiction and my household to get me into a foster home with one of the coaches, as I said. So I ended up graduating high school and I got some college offers. So I ended up going to college playing basketball, but I still had this same mentality and this same mindset that I was a product of my environment. So while in college, I wasn't doing the average things that your student athlete was doing. Like I wasn't focusing in on the books or going to class, none of that. I was just playing basketball, using drugs, selling drugs, gang banging, and everything else. And before I know it, my 4 years of college was over, and I really didn't get nothing out of it, but some basketball games. So as soon as college was over, I moved back home, found myself back in the block, same environment that I was taken away from when I went to the foster home. I found myself back in that environment, and I was selling drugs. I caught my first dope case. I ended up getting probation. Within 6 months, I caught another dope case with a gun charge. I got sentenced to a 7-year and a 12-year sentence running consecutively. For those of you that don't know what running consecutively is, that means you do the 7-year, and then when you're done with the 7, you do the 12. So it was a total of 19 years. So I got sentenced to a total of 19 years in the Missouri Department of Corrections. I go into the Missouri Department of Corrections, just like whatever. So while I'm in the Missouri Department of Corrections, I'm not doing nothing with my time, but I'm playing basketball, I'm smoking blacks, drinking coffee, sitting on the yard talking about which rapper had the most money, which girl looked good in the King magazine, what the homies was doing out there, what I was going to do when I got out there, rapping and all this other stuff. And a Senate bill passed, and it cut my time in half. And I was up for parole. So I went to my parole hearing. It was the fastest parole hearing that there was. I went in there. This is what the parole board told me. They said, Mr. Sims, you are part of the problem. You have a few more years with us. And they asked me, what did I think about institutional drug treatment program? I told them I'd take the program because I knew that it'd be a chance I'd get out a little bit earlier if I completed the program. So that was it. That was all my parole hearing was. So they sent me back to my cell. A few weeks later, I got the answer, and my out date was a few years away, like they said. So, but it really wasn't no thing to me because I was already jailing. I was already institutionalized. I was going on my 4th year, and it was like whatever. So I get called up for the drug treatment program a couple years earlier than what I was supposed to. And so I go to the drug treatment program. I completed, I get out a year earlier than what my original out date was. But I get out, I didn't do nothing. I didn't prepare myself for nothing. So I got out, I went back to the same neighborhood, back to the same environment, hung around the same people, went back to selling the same drugs. Within a year, I was arrested again for selling drugs, selling crack. My cousin set me up. I ended up sitting in the county jail for a few months, beat the case on the technicality, got out, went right back to selling drugs again. And I was getting sent back to prison on technical violations, and then I would get out, do the same thing, or go to county jail for a few days. I was just in and out. And then probably about 2 or 3 years later, the federal government came through. They picked up me and 31 other people off my block, conspiracy charges and gang activity. So now the feds come and pick me up. And I'm sitting in the federal courtroom. Well, when I walk into the federal building, they take me to the holding cell. When I walk in there, I see everybody that I hang with on my whole block. I'm talking about cousins, right hands, uncles, and everything else. And so they take us in the courtroom and they give us our indictment. And then the indictment says conspiracy to distribute 25 keys or more cocaine or cocaine base, along with gang activities, aiding and abetting. Just a lot of different charges on there. And all the charges is 10 to life. So I'm sitting in this federal courtroom, and I know this is real because I'm looking at this paper, and it got my name versus the United States of America. So I'm like, man, and I already did most of my 20s locked up. So here it is, I'm in my 30s, and it's looking like I'm finna do my 30s locked up and 40s. So I'm telling myself, like, man, why do I keep finding myself in these type of situations? Prison, jail, catching cases. And I just realized, man, that I was the first victim of my own actions. I wasn't the only victim of my own actions, but I was the first victim of my own actions. So while I'm spacing this federal time, I'm like, something got to change. And I knew it was my mentality. I knew it was my thought process. So I just started reading different books. I broke away from reading the hood novels, and I just started reading different books. Knowledge of the Self, Seed of the Soul, The Alchemy, The Richest Man in Babylon. I mean, I just was reading books after books and business books and everything else to build my knowledge and start making a game plan for whenever I was going to get released. Because at this time, I didn't know I was still going to court. I don't know if people that's in the state, how state do court and how the feds do court is different. In the state, you might go to court 5 times in 4 months. In the feds, you might go to court 1 time in a year. And so I went to 3 court hearings the whole time on my federal while I'm waiting to get sentenced. I went to a bond hearing, which I know I won't get no bond because I was on state probation and state parole facing a federal charge. And I knew I won't get no bond. So I went to a bond hearing. Then almost a year later, I went to a plea hearing. And almost a year after that, I got sentenced. So I sat in the federal holdover Bates County jail. I'm talking about the worst. I mean, it was the worst, man, for almost 3 years before I even seen the penitentiary. And so I get my time, you know what I'm saying? But while I'm in here, I'm really putting some things together. Like like my company, what I want to do when I got out. So when I get sentenced and I go to the prison in USP Leavenworth, I just continue what I was doing, what I had set, because it was a routine, it was a habit. So I'm steady studying business, steady studying self, you know what I'm saying, challenging every belief that I had, you know what I'm saying, prioritizing what I value with my values, and started having expectations for myself. And so what I did was on my picture board on my wall I took down all my pictures, family, all the homies and all that. I took all that on my picture board and I started building a vision board for what I wanted my life to be like once I got out. And so every day I would wake up and look at that vision board and I would proceed on with my day. I had a routine in prison. You know what I'm saying? I got up, went to breakfast, then I went to work. After work, I went to work out. Then I'll go to the library and work on what I need to work on and do some reading at night before I go to bed. And so, it's time for me to get released. So I get released from federal prison. Only thing I got to my name is these 4 brown legal folders with my plans, goals, and ideas and what I wanted to do when I was going to get out. So once I got released, I went to the halfway house. While in the halfway house, I started to put my plan in motion. I got to the halfway house. I got a job as a telemarketer for making $11 an hour, but it was part-time. I would work from 8 to 2. So I go to work, I catch the bus. I ain't had no car or nothing. They gave me bus tickets at the halfway house. So I would catch the bus, proudly catch the bus and ride to work. And I would get to work maybe like 30 minutes earlier. And so I would just, enjoy the outside, enjoy my freedom. So I would ride the bus to work. As soon as I get out of work, I ride the bus right back to the halfway house. And at the halfway house, I would get on the computer. They had 2 computers, and I would get on the computers, and I wasn't making much money, but I got paid every week. So I would take money out of my check and pay for life coaching courses online. And so every day I would go to work, get off, do my life coaching courses. And then I had wrote some books, some novels while I was locked up. When I first got locked up, I started writing these novels. And so I said, well, since I got them written, since I wrote them, I'm going to type them on up because I wrote them in pencil and pen. So now I'm going to work, getting off, doing life coaching courses for an hour. Now I'm typing on my books. All right, I'm typing on my books. And then I'm looking up other stuff on the internet, to figure out how I can put this together. So that was my routine every day. Like that was what I do. Go to work, get off, life coaching class, type books up. Go to work, get off class, life coaching courses, type the books up. That was my routine. That's what I did. And like I said, I wasn't making much money and I had to pay child support. So I just slowly started putting a little money to the side. And then before I got on house arrest, I got my first little life coaching degree. I completed it. But I'm like, I'm going to continue. It was an offer to continue it. So that's what I did. So I got out the halfway house and got on house arrest, got on home confinement. And this is why I say it's really steps to this. So when you get out of there, you got to take these steps. You got to trust these steps. So when I got out the halfway house, remember I had the job, part-time, making $11 an hour. My routine was go to work in the morning, get off, do my life coaching classes, type up my books. That's all I did. Then I got out of the halfway house in the home confinement. I had to get a whole nother job because I went to the whole nother city. So my first job when I got out of the halfway house on home confinement was working the night shift at the newspaper, putting the newspapers together, the pieces in the newspaper, folding them up and all that. Paid me like $8, $9 an hour. Didn't pay me nothing, but I had a job. So that was my night job. So I figured, okay, since I got a night job, I'm going to give me a day job. And so my day job, I got working for a sporting goods store, So then, and I was making like $8 for that too. So I'm making like $9 one job, $8 another. I got child support to pay. I'm staying in the place. I'm staying with my mama. I'm trying to help out with that as well. So another job opens up that was opened up where I used to work at. It's actually where the feds picked me up at. And they hired me back. So I went and got that job. I'm making $13 an hour. So I'm working 2 jobs. I'm working the night shift, making $13 an hour, working the day shift, making $8 an hour at the sporting goods store. Now I done typed my book up. I done typed one of my books up. So now I get it printed through Amazon. I give me some copies of the books. I start working on the company, and I'm still taking my life coaching courses. Then I done graduated already the life coaching with 1 diploma, but I continued it, and I became a master certified life coach. Soon as I became a master certified life coach, I filed for a business license, Visionary Hustler LLC, because this is what my plan I had when I was locked up, that I was going to start my own business. I was going to be a life coach, and it was going to be called Visionary Hustle. I was going to help people hustle up their vision. I was going to help people manifest their vision and be the boss of their mission. So now, I ain't been out of prison probably like 6 months when this is going on. So I get out, I'm working 2 jobs. I start my own company. I'm selling books, shirts, and I'm hosting seminars. Well, at the same time, I get custody of one of my sons. He comes and lives with me. So now I can't work the overnight job because if some things going on, I had to make sure that I'll be at the house. So I would not work the over. I would not. So I had to quit that job, and so I started doing stocking for Dollar Tree early in the morning and doing the sporting goods store in the evening. And so now I got two jobs. I'm making $8 an hour. This is when I first got. I'm making $8 an hour, but I'm not really tripping on the pay. You know what I'm saying? I'm just. This is all part of the process. So I'm working these two jobs. I'm doing seminars. You know, I'm selling T-shirts. I'm selling books and everything like that. And then I just felt like it was time for me to make a move that was going to be the best for me. So I moved to a whole nother city. Didn't nobody know me or nothing. I get off home confinement and everything else. I'm not no more. I'm public law. See, in the feds, what happens is when you get out of the feds, you go to when you get out the feds and you go to the halfway house and you on home confinement, you are still you are still BOP property. When you soon as your 87% date, or some people say 85, it's really 87% date comes, and you done with that, now you public law. So when I got public law, I moved to a whole nother city. Nobody know me or nothing, and I moved. When I got up here, I couldn't find no job or nothing. You know what I'm saying? I came into a situation that was already in the hole. You feel me? And so I was getting interviews and stuff, but people would. This is when I realized companies say that they felon friendly, but when he goes to hire you, it's one of them. Oh, your felony has to be after so many years. They hire felons, but the felony has to be after so many years, and that's what I was running into. I was getting offered a job position, then my background check wasn't clear, and so I worked like for a week, and then they come say, "Man, your background, you didn't pass the background. We gotta let you go," type stuff, and it was getting real frustrating. You know what I'm saying? But I kept telling myself, this is part of the process, and so I got a call from a lady who was looking to hire marketers and promoters inside of Sam's Club for their home improvement company. And I just told the lady flat out, like, look, I just moved up here. I've been getting all these job offers, but every time I get hired, I go through the process. They do the background check. They end up having to let me go. You know, I don't want to waste your time. You ain't got to waste my time. She's like, no, we don't care about that. So she gave me the job. $15 an hour to stand in Sam's Club and Home Depot and work other home and garden shows, asking people, you know, do they have any home improvement projects that they want to do? Now, remember, when I got out the feds, I got my first job at $11 an hour telemarketing part-time. You know what I'm saying? So I went to that job. As soon as I got out that job, I was doing my life coaching classes and I was typing my books. Then I went from the halfway house to home confinement. I had 2 jobs making $8 an hour. Then I got a job making $13 an hour that I had to quit. And I end up with 2 jobs making $8 an hour. Then I move and I go to a whole nother city where I don't know nobody and I can't get a job. I'm getting jobs, but they let me go because I don't pass the background check. So I get this job making $15 an hour, standing in these stores doing marketing and promoting, and it's helping me with my communication skills, you know, and I'm meeting different type of people, CEOs of real estate companies and everything else. So I still have my company. So I start focusing in on my company, Visionary Hustle LLC. I type up some more books because remember, I wrote 3 novels in prison. So when I got out and when I figured out what it is I was going to do as far as the coaching, I wrote a book called HAVE, Hustle, Attitude, Vision, and Education, the Keys to Success. So I write that book, type it up, print it out. I get to selling that book. I don't even focus on the novels no more. I get to focus on what it is that I'm out here doing about the coaching and everything, the keys to success. So I get in touch with the business circle in the area that I'm at, and I present my story to a bunch of business owners. You know what I'm saying? They welcome me in with open arms. I'm still working this job, $15 an hour, but any outside of the job, I'm hustling my books and my business and T-shirts. And so I started really getting into I did a seminar called Freedom and Success seminar, because I used to do consciousness and success. So I did freedom and success seminars where some people would come out that was work with people that was on probation and parole, or if you know what I'm saying, if you've been to prison or you on probation or parole, they come out and people and I got a good turnout. I met some people, and these people asked me to come and speak and teach a couple of their classes at the little program they had, and they was gonna pay me. So I went and did a few classes, and they paid me, you know, and I started transitioning into a life coach, into reentry coaching. And so this was in 2019. So when 2020 hit, I'm like, oh, 2020 finna be my year. Boom, COVID hit. I'm still working, you know, but when COVID hit, we get laid off. So now I got to focus in on my business, on my company, what I got to do. So I rearranged my whole company and everything, and I boiled it down to what it is that I do. I'm a reentry coach, prison prevention mentor, you know, and that's what it was, and that's where my heart was at, because I'm a prison expert. That's what I am. I'm a prison expert. You know, I've been dealing with this system since 2000. County jails, prison, state probation, state parole, federal probation, federal prison. I've been doing this since 2000, over and over and over. I wasn't the one that did 20 years and figured it out. I did 5-6 years here, didn't figure it out. Go back on a technical violation for whatever, association, or drop dirty, do a year, get out, catch another case, go to county jail, beat it, get out, get sent back again, then go to federal prison. Like, I was in and out, in and out, in and out. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of people that go in and out, in and out, in and out. That was my route, in and out, in and out, in and out. And so now that I'm out now, I know I'm a prison expert. I can tell you the ins and out about prison. You know, I can tell you the ins and out, how to fail, how you're going to fail when you make a reentry, and how you're going to succeed making a reentry. Because I was doing things that fail. I kept going back and going back. This is how I was failing. But then now that I'm out, I ain't catching a violation. I ain't dropping dirties. I'm not doing nothing. I'm succeeding. And I can tell you how this is happening. You know, and so that's how I got to where I'm at now, being a reentry coach, being a mentor, and everything else. And I wrote the book called Inmate to Inspiration. This book right here, Inmate to Inspiration, and it tells you my story and everything, but it also gives you the keys and everything else. So once I wrote that book, that's when the doors started open. People started realizing my story. People started seeing what it took to make that change and what I had to do, because that's what I talk about. And I started getting on podcasts. I started getting speaking engagements and everything else. And I started this reentry support group for people that is going through the reentry, where you got a support group. You can type anything you want in this group, your frustrations or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And because we all been through it, and we can help you navigate. You fresh out, we can help you navigate through this, because it's people here that been in this as well. You know, and it's also people that work with people. We can direct you to resources and everything else. So that's my story. That's how I got from me start doing prison time, whatever, to where I'm at now. You know, things that helped me change. It was 3 things I always focus on how I got to where I'm at. I had to challenge my beliefs. That's one thing I had to do. I had to challenge my beliefs. I had to believe that I was a product of my environment. Then I started looking around and noticing people that was from my environment that I grew up in, that had parents on drugs. Some of them didn't even have a mother or a father. They lost a parent growing up, and they didn't even navigate and take the criminal lifestyle that I took. And they made it out. They successful business owners and everything. They didn't use they didn't use the phrase "a product of my environment" to lead them into a criminal lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? They educated themselves, they worked hard, and they made a good life for themselves without having to go through no prison system or none of that. So I started using them as an example to say, you know what? That's just a belief I got. That belief don't mean it's true, because these people showing me that you don't have to be a product of your environment. And so I started challenging certain beliefs. I challenged the belief that my PO that a parole officer is a babysitter, that a parole officer are against me. You know what I'm saying? I had to challenge that belief, because on the real with me, not saying for everybody else, but with me, a lot of times all the time, not a lot of times, a lot of times I got sent back because I was supposed to got sent back. I was violating the law or whatever. I was supposed to get sent back. It wasn't my PO it was me. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times I was making excuses instead of self-checking. That's one of the biggest things that helped me make a whole transition was I had to self-check myself on my beliefs, my values, and my expectations. And so I had to challenge them beliefs. Then I had to start prioritizing what I value because I had good values, but they was geared to what I was valuing was wrong. I was valuing the street life, the block, the gang, drugs, uh, uh, alcohol, money. This is what I value. I would wake up every day, me and the homies every day. I wasn't the only one. We would wake up every day, go to the block faithfully. We was loyal to each other. We was dedicated to that. I had good values. They were just geared towards wrong thing. And so I had to start prioritizing what I value. And the first thing I had to value was myself because it didn't matter if I didn't value myself. I wouldn't have valued nothing else. I wouldn't value my family. I wouldn't have valued God. I wouldn't value my freedom. But when I started valuing myself, start seeing myself of some value, then I wouldn't put myself in situations that would jeopardize my freedom, my life, and everything else. And then I just had to start having expectations for myself. Like I had asked myself, what do you expect of yourself? I expect myself to be great. I expect myself to be free. I expect myself to set an example for those that's been through the prison system and see that you can do it. And you know what I'm saying? You ain't got to go back. You ain't got to ever go back to prison again. All you got to do is just change your mentality. All you got to do is have the right values, have some expectations for yourself, get rid of them self-limited beliefs, and you're going to make something happen. And that's where I'm at, and that's my story. If you have any questions, you can type them in the chat, or if you want to come on, I'll bring you on and let you ask your questions. I made this reentry journey tonight, sharing my story. I was the guest because I know a lot of people tune in are in this group, and a lot of you all haven't heard my story or you don't know my story. And I know you're like, why does he has a reentry? What does he know about the reentry support? Man, I know. I've been through it. You know what I'm saying? I just ain't started this group because I have no interaction with prisons or been to prisons or struggled on I struggle on the reentry. I know what it's like to get out. You know what I'm saying? Go back, get out, go back, get out, go back. That's what I did. I got out. That was my life. You know what I'm saying? Like I was affiliated with the gang. You know what I'm saying? And I had no expectations for myself. What I value was all wrong. My beliefs was all wrong. And that's why I would get out of prison, go back, get out of prison, catch a case, go back, get out of prison. And then the feds came and picked me up. I was on state probation, state parole, and in the feds at the same time. I didn't just do one prison stint. I just didn't do two prison stints. Did three. You know what I'm saying? It took 3 times and some county jail times as well in the feds to finally figure this out. And it's a lot of brothers and it's a lot of people, period, that go through that. How many people do you know that get out, go back, get out and go back? You know what I'm saying? I was that person. I was that person. So I just wanted to share my story with y'all tonight on this episode 6, my story, Inmate the Inspiration, because I know some of you don't know my story or haven't heard my story. So I want to give you my story and let you know why this is what I do, how I became successful, how I transitioned from being an inmate. And I know people don't like to use the term inmate. I was an inmate. I'm just going to be flat out with you. I was an inmate. I jailed. That's what I did. I jailed. I was an inmate. You know what I'm saying? Until my last prison stint, I had to really focus in and figure out why do I keep ending up in here? Why, and I had to figure it out. I had to do a lot of reading, soul searching, and some self-checking. And that's how I got to the inspiration part. So if you got any questions, like I said, man, write them down in the chat, comment them in the chat. If you want to jump on with me right now, just let me know. I'll send you the link over to jump on and ask any questions that you want to ask. I'm here, man. I gave you my story. This is what I'm about. This is why I do what I do. I'm really wholehearted, and let me explain this too as well. I'm not big on like prison reform. Not saying that I'm against it or nothing, but I'm not big on reforming a system that's designed to oppress or destroy. Because no matter how much you reform the system's going to be there. Desmond Tutu said this: we must stop just pulling people out of the river. That's the prison reform. We must stop just pulling people out of the river. We must go upstream and figure out why they keep falling in. That's where I'm at. I'm going upstream to figure out why they keep falling in. I'm going upstream to attack the root of the problem, so you ain't got to worry about reforming the system because you're not in the system. If you've been to the system, you ain't going back to the system. If you ain't never been to the system, that's why I go talk to these youth and I do these prison prevention, no new number speeches, because I don't want them to become a number in the prison system. So they ain't got to worry about getting in the prison system, hoping for some reform of the prison system, and that's just where I'm at. I'm not against prison reform. Trust me, I know the conditions. I've been in some bad conditions inside of prisons. And I've been in the mandatory minimums and all that. I understand that them things need to be attacked and addressed. Trust and believe they do. But I'm focusing on keeping us out the system, designing the system to combat their system, designing the system so you ain't got to get caught up in their system. That's what I'm about. So yeah, man, I really appreciate y'all tapping in with me tonight on the re-entry journey. I wanted to share my story so that you all will understand my story, and see why I do this. Like I said, you got any questions, you could tap them you could type your questions. I keep saying tap. You can type your questions in the comments, or I'll bring you on to ask your questions, whatever you want to do. But I'm opening the floor right now for those of you tuning in. I'm opening the floor up right now for you to type in your questions, ask your questions, or say what you want to say. But yeah, this is my story. Inmate the Inspiration. Also, if you haven't got my book, Inmate the Inspiration, check it out. Order it, man, on my website, KardellSims.com. You can order it there. Like the sponsor, we do sponsor books. I also got my attack and recidivism workbook. So yeah, tap in with me. This is my story. Ask your questions if you got any. If not, then we're gonna close it down. But this is what I'm about, man. That's my story. I was hard-headed, in and out of prison. Wasn't even trying to figure it out. Wasn't even worried about preparing myself for my release. I was getting out, getting right back to it. And I wasn't the only one in my circle or on my block that was doing that. There was a lot of us that was going to prison, getting out, getting right back to it. Going to prison, getting out, getting right back to it. For real. And so, yeah, that's my story. Again, I'd like to appreciate y'all for tapping in tonight on the Reentry Journey podcast. I'd like to thank y'all for listening and tuning in as I share my story. I understand that this group and this podcast is to spread light on the reentry journey, things that you're going to go through. Just like I was talking about earlier, man, this is a process. I went through a process. Got out, was making $11 an hour. Job down, was making $8 an hour, $8, $13. Like, this is the process. But you got to trust the process, man. If you prepared, you got you a plan and everything, you got to trust this process because it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it in the end, that you'll never go back to prison and you ain't never seen the inside of a cell, and you can train and teach your children not to go through it as well. Because man, it's just so much to my story, because all them times I was getting locked up, man, it was taking a toll on my children as well, especially my sons, because I really wasn't there the way for them. You know what I'm saying? And so they followed, like my older son followed my footprints. You know what I'm saying? So now, he ended up going to prison, or he locked up. So yeah, trust me, I know, man, I know this. So appreciate y'all again tapping in with me tonight, tapping in every Monday with the reentry journey. It's going to be possible that we're going to start moving the podcast to Sunday nights. I will let you all know who our guest will be next week. Once again, thank you for tapping in with me on the reentry journey, episode 6. Inmate the inspiration. It was my story. Got any questions? You need mentorships or whatever? Just hit me up anytime. Thank you all for tuning in once again. It's the reentry journey, and I'm out.